D, wait for it, delightful.
Check out the name tag. You're in my world now, Grandma.
Superhero stories are known for their action, colorful characters, and larger-than-life adventures. While those are undoubtedly some of the most popular aspects of a superhero's life, stories centered around crime fighters are also comprised of several other components, including romance. A large number of superhero stories, whether they're told in comic books, movies, television series, or even video games, feature a love story. There are certain superheroes that are often associated with romance than others, such as Spider-Man, Superman, Hulk, Iron Man, or The Flash. Because of that, fans are very familiar with couples like Clark Kent and Lois Lane, Mary Jane and Peter Parker, or Tony Stark and Pepper Potts. But what about unexpected superhero romances? In general, the classic superhero relationships fans have followed throughout the past few decades have rarely changed. However, given the ever-changing nature of comic books and stories centered around costumed crime fighters, there have also been some superhero romances that have caught even the most hardcore fans off guard. It may sound strange, but there have been even quite a few of those over the years. Given their unexpected nature, though, a lot of them have faded into obscurity. With that in mind, let's take a look at superhero relationships that caught people by surprise. Superman and Wonder Woman. With the New 52, DC Comics took the opportunity to shake things up in its universe and offer bold new takes on some of its most popular characters. One of the biggest changes brought on by this new era in the DC universe was the fact that Clark Kent and Lois Lane were no longer an item. Instead, the Big Blue Boy Scout found love in his fellow Justice League member, Wonder Woman. Unsurprisingly, this development prompted some outrage from comic book fan community. Despite the controversy, however, Clark and Diana's romance continued to flourish. Over time, this relationship became a pivotal aspect of the New 52. Eventually, their love would open the door for a spin-off series centered around the heroes' shared adventures, appropriately titled Superman and Wonder Woman. Even though Clark and Diana's relationship presented a major shift in DC's status quo, their dynamic was quite compelling, as it allowed the two heroes the chance to be with someone who understood how lonely being a superpowered individual on Earth could be. Sadly, the pair's relationship came to an end during the final days of Superman's storyline. Shortly after that, during DC Rebirth, Wonder Woman and Superman's romance was retconned to allow the original Man of Steel to have a fresh start with Lois Lane and their son, Jonathan Kent. Aunt May and Dr. Octopus. Peter Parker has always had a problem when it comes to keeping his superhero and civilian lives separate. A great example of this was the time Aunt May and Dr. Octopus became engaged. Back in the 70s, Aunt May became Otto Octavius' housekeeper. Their relationship was strictly professional at first, but things changed when Ock realized that May was about to inherit an island in Canada. Why in the world would Doc Ock be interested in having an island, you ask? Well, because the island happened to have one of the biggest nuclear plants in the world. Desperate to own the power plant, Octavius came up with a plan. He would marry Aunt May and then kill her so he would inherit the piece of land. His plan worked at first, as May accepted his marriage proposal. Unfortunately for Peter's doting aunt, however, the wedding was interrupted by some unlikely guests. Hammerhead, another of Spidey's villains, got word of Aunt May's inheritance, and he decided to stop Doc Ock from getting his metal tentacles on it and take it for himself. To accomplish his goal, Hammerhead decided to storm Ock and Aunt May's wedding. Ock fled with May and to her island, but Hammerhead followed them. Unfortunately, Spidey was on the case. He landed on the island, rescued Aunt May, and left Dr. Octopus and Hammerhead to figure things out on their own, thus putting an end to Otto Octavius and May's relationship. Batman and Batgirl. Batman and Batgirl have always shared a special mentor-mentee relationship in the comics. Barbara looks up to Bruce and constantly thrives to live up to the bat symbol on her chest. To fans' dismay, their dynamic received a drastic shift for the DC animated universe in Batman Beyond. It was hinted that Barbara and Bruce had been romantically involved at some point. Years after Batman Beyond became to an end, DC decided to explore the pair's relationship in the show's comic book continuity. In the story, it was revealed that Bruce and Barbara shared a relationship while Dick Grayson was out of town. Their romance took an unexpected turn when Barbara became pregnant with Bruce's child. Bruce told Dick what had happened between him and Barbara, and Grayson decided to leave the Bat family behind. Sadly, Barbara suffered a miscarriage while beating up a mugger, and thus her relationship with Bruce came to an end. This storyline was met with a lot of controversy as fans weren't happy with the idea of Bruce and Barbara willingly betraying Dick Grayson in such a way. Despite the outrage from the comic book fan community, the concept of Barbara and Bruce being an item was explored once again in the 2016 animated film Batman: The Killing Joke, which showed the pair together on a rooftop. Batgirl and Batman's romance hasn't resurfaced ever since, so their relationship is hopefully a thing of the past. Punisher and Elektra. Given the tragic fate of Frank Castle's family, it may be easy to think the anti-hero isn't interested in relationships. In reality, though, the Punisher was actually had a large number of love interests throughout his comic book history. One of those love interests was none other than Elektra Natchios. Prior to Marvel's 2006 Civil War event, Punisher had a slew of peculiar run-ins with Elektra, as the talented assassin would often take out his targets before him. Initially, Castle wasn't too fond of Elektra's meddling in his affairs, but he changed his tune once he learned she was toying with him. Having realized her true intentions, Punisher asked Elektra out on a date. The relationship didn't go anywhere for quite a while, but the character's romance resurfaced years later during Daniel Way's Thunderbolts run. In the storyline, Castle and Elektra acknowledged their feelings towards each other and began having an affair behind the backs of their Thunderbolts teammates. As unexpected as Punisher and Elektra's romance was, their dynamic actually worked, a large part thanks to the characters' striking similarities. They were both cold-blooded individuals with a knack for violence and brutality, after all. While the couple ultimately didn't go anywhere, Frank and Elektra's relationship became one of the most peculiar romantic dynamics in the Marvel Universe. Medusa and Johnny Storm. Black Bolt and Medusa may be one of Marvel's best couples, but their marriage has been no bed of roses. During the 2013 Infinity event, for example, Black Bolt destroyed Atlan while fighting the Mad Titan and set off an enormous Terrigen mist cloud that traveled around the world, creating a new Inhumans. Shortly after the disaster, Black Bolt decided to leave his family behind to go off the grid. The Monarch's actions understandably enraged Medusa, and she decided to cut ties with him. To fans' surprise, Medusa found a new romantic partner during Marvel's all-new, all-different era, Johnny Storm, aka Human Torch. The hero's romance brought an interesting dynamic to the Inhumans books, but it also brought a lot of distress for a few players in the Marvel Universe. As for Crystal, Johnny Storm's longtime girlfriend, she also had a hard time accepting Medusa's and Johnny Storm's relationship. Regardless of the opposition, however, the unlikely crime-fighting couple continued their romance while also supporting each other during their constant superhero escapades, most prominently during Kang's attack on the Inhuman race. Still, despite their chemistry, the two heroes eventually called things off and Medusa reconciled with Black Bolt. Here's hoping Johnny Storm is also able to find love at some point in the future. Superman and Lashina. Even though Superman the Animated Series was for the most part a kid-friendly take on the Man of Steel universe, the people behind the show weren't afraid to explore darker storylines from time to time. This became quite clear during the series' two-part finale, when Darkseid brainwashed Superman and turned him into one of his finest soldiers. Superman's tenure as an agent of Apocalypse paved the way for a surprising revelation. The Big Blue Boy Scout had started a relationship with one of Darkseid's top soldiers and Female Furies member, Lashina. Knowing the Man of Steel had been coerced into a romance with such a ruthless villain was disturbing, but thankfully their relationship didn't last long. Superman eventually regained his memory, fought off the Female Furies, and defeated Darkseid. While Superman and Lashina's romance didn't go anywhere, the people behind the show initially planned to explore the fallout of their relationship in Batman Beyond. As it turned out, a script for the Dark Knight-centric show centered around Lashina coming to Earth to reveal that she had conceived a son with the Man of Steel. Their son turned evil and became the new ruler of Apocalypse after dethroning Darkseid. Following his victory, Superman's son planned to take over Earth, which prompted Lashina to ask for the Justice League's help to stop him. Given how dark and downright disturbing Superman and Lashina's relationship was, it was probably for the best that it wasn't explored further. Gwen Stacy and Norman Osborn.
Gwen Stacy was introduced relatively late into Spider-Man's comic book history, but she quickly became a staple in Peter Parker's life. Shortly after they met, Gwen and Peter started dating, and the young woman effectively became Spider-Man's first true love. The pair remained together for a long time, but their love story came to an abrupt end when Gwen died at the hands of the Green Goblin. Gwen's demise devastated Peter, but he was left with the memory of the life they shared together. Unfortunately for the Wallcrawler, though, his relationship with Gwen wasn't as clean as he believed. Years after her death, during the Sins Past storyline, it was revealed that Gwen had begun an affair with Norman Osborn. The affair went on for some time until Stacy found out she was pregnant with twins. Gwen gave birth to her babies, and she tried to run away to start a new life with Peter. Sadly, Norman got to her first and killed her. That alone was quite tragic and disturbing, but it wasn't the end of the story. Due to Osborn's altered DNA, courtesy of his goblin serum, Gwen's twins age at an incredibly rapid pace. The twins grew up in the span of a few years and went on to become supervillains hell-bent on destroying Spider-Man. Yikes! If the storyline isn't a prime example of Parker's legendary bad luck, I don't know what is.
Peter Quill and Kitty Pryde. Almost every superhero has a signature love interest. For Kitty Pryde, that was Colossus. The duo's romance was a staple of the X-Men books for many years, and the heroes even went on to become one of the most famous and beloved couples in the Marvel Universe. Unfortunately, after decades together, Kitty Pryde decided to part ways with her longtime partner following his transformation into the new Juggernaut. Sometime after breaking things off with Colossus, the hero found love with everyone's favorite space rogue, Peter Quill, also known as Star-Lord. Seeing a relatively grounded superhero like Kitty be romantically involved with a cosmic adventurer like Star-Lord was unusual, but their relationship actually worked. Kitty's serious demeanor was a great counterbalance to Peter's sarcastic attitude, and their shared adventurous spirit made them an almost perfect match. Their romance was so strong that Kitty even became a part of the Guardians of the Galaxy for a few years. Just like most of the romances on this list, though, their relationship wasn't meant to last. During Marvel's 2016 Civil War II event, the Guardians learned that Peter had been keeping some pivotal pieces of information from them regarding the superhero conflict. This led to the Galactic team to break up. Kitty called things off with Quill and returned to Earth to live a semi-normal life. Aunt May and J. Jonah Jameson Sr. Ben Parker and Otto Octavius haven't been the only loves in May Parker's life. In 2009, Marvel introduced J. Jonah Jameson Sr., the father of Peter Parker's boss in the Daily Bugle, J. Jonah Jameson. Unlike his son, Jameson Sr. was a kind and generous man who also happened to support Spider-Man. Shortly after the character's debut, the House of Ideas shocked readers with the revelation that Jameson Sr. had begun a relationship with Aunt May. At first, it seemed like the pair's romance was a fleeting thing meant to build up drama in Peter's life. As it turned out, though, that wasn't the case. After some years together, Aunt May and J. Jonah Jameson Sr. tied the knot. Jonah Sr. and May's marriage caught fans by surprise, but their relationship ended up being a great addition to the Spider-Man universe. The characters loved each other, and it was great to see May allowing herself to be happy following the death of Uncle Ben. Their relationship continued to develop as time went on, and they even worked together on Parker Industries' Uncle Ben Foundation, which helped the less fortunate all around the world. Sadly, much like her heroic nephew, May wasn't meant to have a happy ending. J. Jonah Jameson Sr. fell ill from genetic disease, and despite Spider-Man's best effort to save him, he passed away, leaving May and Peter devastated. Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. It feels wrong to include a brother-sister duo on this list of unexpected superhero couples, but as hard as it may be to believe, it happened. Marvel's Ultimate Universe, which debuted in the 2000s, Ultimate Spider-Man #1, put a twisted spin on some of the company's most beloved characters. Two heroes in particular that received that twisted treatment were Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. You see, in this universe, they weren't only siblings, but also lovers. At first, their relationship was kept fairly vague, but their romance was finally confirmed in Ultimates 3, #1, when Wasp told the very surprised Captain America that the superpowered siblings were romantically involved with each other. Understandably, Wanda and Pietro's romance received a lot of backlash, as large number of fans couldn't believe Marvel had taken such a direction with the characters. Ultimately, the pair's relationship didn't last long. In the same issue where it was revealed that Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were an item, Wanda was shot and killed by a mysterious assailant. Then, in Ultimates 3, number 5, Wanda's killer was revealed to be none other than Ultron. As it turned out, Ultron had fallen in love with Scarlet Witch, but he became furious when he learned that she was in a relationship with Quicksilver. Full of rage, the psychopathic robot decided to kill Wanda right in front of Pietro. Yikes! That's one disturbing romance. And gross. Juggernaut and She Hulk. Hero-villain couples aren't common in the comic book world, but they aren't exactly unheard of. Take She-Hulk and Juggernaut, for example. The two characters are vastly different. She-Hulk is a righteous superhero determined to do the right thing, while Juggernaut is a psychopathic criminal who will stop at nothing to achieve his goals. Surprisingly, despite their glaring differences, the superpowered characters once became an item. Back in the 2000s, Juggernaut decided to turn over a new leaf. He joined Charles Xavier and even befriended a mutant named Sammy. Unfortunately, as fate would have it, Juggernaut went on a rampage after learning that Sammy was being taken away from Xavier's mutant school. Juggernaut was arrested, and Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk, was hired to represent him. Initially, the two characters clashed, as Jennifer showed a great deal of disgust over the countless evil deeds committed by the baddie. Shockingly, however, She-Hulk changed her mind regarding Juggernaut after he stopped Rhino from escaping the holding facility they were in. Following an awkward conversation, She-Hulk and Juggernaut slept together. Juggernaut and She-Hulk's relationship wasn't only surprising but quite disturbing, and it stirred a lot of controversy around the comic book fan community. Unfortunately, the characters' eyebrow-raising romance was even erased from continuity when it was revealed that their encounter had occurred in an alternate universe. SpiderMan and Mockingbird. Spider-Man has been romantically involved with a lot of people throughout the years. Most fans are aware of his relationships with Mary Jane Watson and Gwen Stacy, but not many may be familiar with his romance with Bobby Morris, aka Mockingbird. Shortly after the events of Superior Spider-Man, Peter Parker became a billionaire. His company, Parker Industries, was responsible for outfitting S.H.I.E.L.D. with the latest tech, and Spidey became an agent of the organization as a result. As a part-time S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, Peter was constantly paired with Mockingbird. The heroes didn't get along at first, but as time went on, they both warmed up to one another and eventually became an item. Despite the unlikeliness of their relationship, the heroes' romance was a breath of fresh air for Spider-Man universe. Up to that point, most of Peter's relationships had been based on tragedy, as the hero struggled and often failed to keep his significant others safe from his enemies. That stress wasn't there with Mockingbird. In fact, the two superheroes often found themselves saving the world side by side. Another fascinating aspect about their relationship was their interactions, because it was an absolute treat seeing Mockingbird and Spider-Man's wildly different personalities bouncing off of each other. Their relationship may have been a surprise, but Mockingbird and Spidey's romance remains one of the most compelling and exciting dynamics represented in the Spider-Man universe. The Hulk and Black Widow. Avengers Age of Ultron delivered a good number of surprises for comic book fans. One of the biggest ones was the revelation that Natasha Romanoff and Bruce Banner had become an item. Even though Banner was initially adamant to keep Romanoff away due to his extreme and destructive anger management issues, the pair slowly came to terms with their feelings toward each other. In fact, by the film's third act, Nate and Bruce shared a passionate kiss right before setting off to fight Ultron. However, while it seemed like the crime-fighting pair had a future together, their relationship had a rather abrupt end. Shortly after defeating Ultron, Hulk realized the danger he posed for mankind. This realization led him to hop on a Quinjet and leave Earth's mightiest heroes behind. Somehow, that trip took the Jade Giant to the planet known as Sakaar, where he became the Grandmaster Star Gladiator for 2 years. Following the events of Thor Ragnarok, Bruce traveled back to Earth and had a brief interaction with Natasha in Avengers Infinity War. Given the immediate threat of Thanos' arrival, the heroes didn't really have time to discuss their relationship. It's currently a mystery whether Natasha and Bruce's romance will continue, so we'll have to wait and see what the future has in store for them moving into Avengers 4 and beyond. Black Canary and Batman. One of DC's earliest versions of Black Canary had a very complicated backstory. Originally, she lived in Earth 2, where she was happily married to a man named Larry Lance. During a confrontation with a villain, Larry died, and Dinah was left devastated. Being unable to process her grief, she decided to move to Earth 1. There, she became romantically involved with Green Arrow. The heroes were happily together, but, as we've learned over the past few decades, a crime fighter's love life can't be that simple. Shortly after starting her relationship with Oliver Queen, Dinah also fell in love with Batman. In an issue of Justice League of America written by Bob Kanger, Black Canary traveled to the Watchtower for her observation duty shift. After a while, Batman went in to replace her, but Canary asked the Dark Knight if she could stay with him. Batman accepted, and before they knew it, they confessed their feelings for one another and kissed. While it seemed like Batman was about to turn Black Canary and Green Arrow's relationship into an uncomfortable love triangle, the hero's kiss was quickly brushed over. In Justice League of America number 88, Batman was shown to be in conflict over his feelings for Black Canary. To the hero's surprise, though, Dinah brushed off what had happened by asking Bruce for his advice regarding her romance with Oliver Queen. As it turned out, Canary actually saw Bruce more like a brother. Well, that's certainly one way to write off an uncomfortable superhero romance.
Hey nerds, if you like this video, go ahead and click that Geek What icon and subscribe. If you want to see more videos like this, join me every Tuesday where you can check out the list.